is actually the difference between us the Jews and you the Gentiles when we and you, when we are born into this world. What's the difference? There are some differences. It's important to understand you want to be effective in your mission to the Jews, you have to tackle them and approach them completely different than you tackle any other group of people on the face of this earth. So what is the difference between us the Jews and you the Gentiles when we are born into this world? You have work to do. You have no work to do? I don't think that this is my secretary then. It must be lots of them. Okay.
So would it be that you believe that you are the chosen people? Full stop.
Or is it the 8th day? Sorry.
Yeah.
You're born into the Abrahamic covenant.
Apple of God's eye.
Yeah. The first difference is what you said that is correct. We the Jews, when we are born into this world, we are born under the Abrahamic covenant. And you the Gentiles are not. This is important to understand. It's a huge difference. Why? Because now we don't really understand that. We start understanding that only if we come to faith in Messiah. But
Omri, quickly, that's why we Gentile men don't have to be circumcised.
say again?
That's why we Gentile men don't have to be circumcised.
Yeah, the 8th
No,
day.
forget now about being circumcised or not. The issue is not the circumcision so much. But when we Jews are born into this world, we are born under the Abrahamic covenant. The token of the Abrahamic covenant, of course, is a circumcision. So if somebody doesn't circumcise, a Jew who doesn't circumcise his or her son, they're actually cutting themselves, not the son, but themselves off from the Abrahamic covenant. But because of the Abrahamic covenant, every Jewish person ever walked on the face of this earth, whether we believe in God or not, we all know one thing, and one thing we know for a fact: if there is a God, it's our God, not yours. Ours, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of Israel. Okay? Now, so keep in mind also that when we, by the hand of Moses, when he led us out of Egypt, he gave us a warning from God. What did he say to us? He said to us, do not follow the ways of the Gentiles and their gods, for all of them are wood and stone. So not only we Jews know that if there is a God, it's our God, the God of Israel, also we have a warning never to follow the ways of the Gentiles. Now, this is actually tricky here, because when you look at history of our people, the Jews, in fact, we always followed the Gentiles, but in our mind, do you know that Orthodox Judaism today, the one who actually not founded, but actually the living person behind Orthodox Judaism today is Rabbi Akiva. Okay? He was actually a Gentile convert to Judaism. And the Orthodox Jews are following him. Yet the Jew, one of us, the Messiah, they think of him as a Gentile. Can you see how it's all twisted here? So this is an important part, though, to understand. When the opportunity does present itself for you as Gentiles to share with the Jewish people, you have to convey to them that you're not asking them to follow your God. You're following their God. I don't care if it was 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, 2 years ago, 20 years ago, 200 years ago, but most assuredly not more than 2,000 years ago. At some point in your past, each and every one of you, you have turned your own backs on your own gods, right? The God of Abraham, the God of the sun, the God of the moon, the God of the mountain, the God of the river, and at some point you start following our God. Is it not the case? Mm-hmm. At some point in your past. But this is what the Christian church forgot. You need to remember that, whom it is that you follow. And when you communicate with the Jews, you need to deliver that to them. We talked last week about the example of Ruth. It's a perfect example from the scriptures. How a Gentile person joining Israel, it's saying to Naomi, Ruth, where you go, I will go. And when you live, I shall live. Your people are my people, and your God is my God. Even if you give them the Christian gospel, and what you would say would be theologically true, at the end of the day, the Jews will conclude, well, that might be fine for you, but I'm a Jew. So it doesn't apply to me. So you see, but the gospel is to the Jew first, and the Jewish gospel again, for the Jews to accept it, they must understand it in a Jewish context. So you have to convey to them that you're not asking them to change their religion, to betray their people, to betray their God. No. Why would they? They're the greatest nation in the world. Their God is the one true God. They just need to return back to their God. You believe in their God. Isn't it the case? You follow their, so if the discussion comes, you need to convey that you follow our God. You talk to an Orthodox Jew or a secular Jew, say to them, I believe in your God. As a general statement, I believe that each and every one of you, dealing with the Jews, each and every one of you will do a great service to yourselves and to the advancement of the gospel, if you will be less Christians and more followers of the God of Israel. Okay? That's what the Israelis need to hear. No Israeli, no Jew is interested ever to be a Christian. It's not an attraction to us. You know what? Check it out. Even people in Tasmania are not interested to become Christians. Right? And they were not persecuted for 2,000 years. Only they saw the hypocrisy of their father or their mother or their teacher or who knows, the preacher at church. But the Jews, you have to understand the 2,000 years of persecution of the Jews, and this is rooted. It's written on our memory stick. We can't erase that.
I have a problem with that.
Yes.
And I'll be frank, up in front of you. I understand the Abrahamic covenant and all the covenants and the start of Jewish people. But when you look at the oldest book of the Bible as we see it, is Job. Job was a Gentile.
Yeah.
And the discourse he had with his three best mates, who you wouldn't want his best mates.
Well, as they say, with friends like that, who needs enemies, huh?
That's exactly right. But he had a burning understanding of God the Father, and he understood what was going to come with Christ, and also understood the power of the Holy Spirit, because a lot of the questions, a lot of scientific questions and all that sort of stuff. So I struggle with it, I must admit, that prior to Abraham, he was Abram, up to that was Gentile.
Yes.
And we go back to Adam, and we follow all that through, and we understand that God called Abraham, or Abram, out of his land to create a new land. So the message that he wanted to give to the world was through a chosen people. No dramas with that. But I still try to struggle with you saying it's...
So are you saying, you're talking about that the entire thing before Abraham is Gentile? I can't argue about that. It's fine. It's true.
Yeah. I'm just saying that some of us draw a lot of strength from books like Job, because there is a lot of depth and understanding of the God, the Creator, in all of that. So I'm not too sure whether
but I'm trying to understand what exactly is a question or the thing to. Am I supposed to respond to something or what?
Well,
no, it's just a statement.
Are you saying that Omri is saying we've always followed gods of wood and stone and metal,
yeah.
but that wasn't like that in the beginning, was it? No, not from Adam, because Adam knew God, and so it was only afterwards that this happened.
That's right. See, we take, I take a view that every book in the Bible is God inspired. Mm-hmm. Everything is counterbalanced, either the New Testament or the Old Testament, is revealed in different ways. With that, I go to Genesis 5 straight away, and I look at the 10 names of the first 10 names in the Bible.
Yeah, Adam to Noah.
I look at the Jewish names, the Jewish translations for those names.
Yes, the Hebrew names, yes.
And you read it out, and it's the Christian message. Long before Abraham, was given the task. Now, I'm not denying Abraham. I'm just saying that your book, the Jewish book, or the Bible as we know it, has got a lot of messianic stuff prior to Abraham.
Sure, yeah, okay. I'm not denying that. Great. Well, the first messianic promise is actually even in the Garden of Eden,
Correct?
in Genesis 3:15. And you can actually see, because God was talking about the seed of the woman, right? And you can actually see, by the way, I don't know if any of you know that, because it's not well known among non-speaking Hebrew people, unless you listen to somebody who taught that. But we can actually see by the way that Eve called her sons that she understood what actually God said. How did she call her first begotten son? Cain, right?
Okay.
What does the Bible says? Why did she call him Cain?
I have begotten the man.
Amen.
Amen.
Jehovah.
Most of the
Amen.
translation would
Yeah.
say, I have begotten a man from the Lord.
Amen, Jehovah.
Amen, Jehovah. That's right. That's what it says.
Literally, it should be in the Hebrew.
Yod Heh Vav Heh.
ותקרא שמו קין ותאמר קניתי איש את אדוני. And she said, and she called his name Cain, and she said, I have begotten a man, Jehovah. She understood that the world Redeemer, the Messiah, will be a God-man. But her misapplication was she thought it was her firstborn. Okay, she thought that her firstborn Cain, that's actually the world Messiah that God has promised the world. Now, with the second son that was born, how did she call him? Abel, right? Anybody knows what it comes from in the Hebrew and what does the Hebrew means?
I made a mistake the first time.
I made a mistake the first time. Not bad, but why? Not quite literally as you put it. The Hebrew name is Hevel,
My father is
and how does the book of Ecclesiastes start in Hebrew? Havel Havelim Amar Kohelet Hakol Havel. Vanity of vanities, right? So the second name she called Hevel, Abel, you say in English. Literally, it means in Hebrew vanity. With the second son that was born, she understood that no, that wasn't the word Messiah, the first one, because she could see that her firstborn was, born in sin. But even with the 10th person, Noah. What was Noah in Hebrew mean? It comes from comfortable, comfort. Why was he called Noah? It says he will give us rest. So that's again the understanding that the world Redeemer would come was there right from the Garden of Eden. That nobody denies that, it's obvious, for sure. But as time progressed, God. This is another important thing to understand about the scriptures is the progressive revelation of God. God didn't give all the truth at one time. This is also a great insight for you and me, not to give all the truth to the Israelis at one time, okay? Do it over a period of time, slowly. One bit at a time. Otherwise we can't handle too much.
Does that ring true with you, does it?
Told to have a pair of each animal, but the clean animal 7. As a Levitical prelude.
Tonight?
How would you explain that? Well, that he took them for a sacrifice for God after. But the point of the matter is that until the coming of the Messiah, the faith was always, people were always saved by faith, not by works. But the content of the faith of people throughout history is not always the same. Until the coming of the Messiah, according to as much revelation that was given until that point in time, those who were saved were those who believed in the promises of God, the promises of the world Redeemer. Now, as time progressed, God gave more and more insight. And once he came, once they accepted him or not. So, I don't have a problem with that. Of course, until Abraham, all humanity were Gentile. However, it's interesting to note that it is when God created the world and until the time of the Tower of Babel, there was only one language spoken. Which language was that? Anybody knows?
Hebrew.
Why do you think it was Hebrew? I can prove it to it's Hebrew, by the way, if you want. It's easy. First, we can tell the first line of evidence is by the name of God. Yehovah we say in Hebrew, Jehovah or Yahweh in English, but it has no meaning at all in any language on the face of this earth apart from Hebrew. And in Hebrew it actually means two things. First, Shehaya vehoveh veyavo, who was and is to come. And Hoveh in Hebrew is the present, Yehovah the one who makes the present. He spoke and it became. That's the first line of evidence. The second line of evidence is, you know, when you go to Germany, people have German names. And when you go to France, people have French names. And when you go to Spain, people have Spanish names. Well, it's quite interesting to note that all the angels mentioned in scriptures by name, they all have Hebrew names. Michael and Gabriel and Satan and Hillel and Shachar, they all have Hebrew names. Why? Because the heavenly language is Hebrew. Now, why did God call Adam Adam? It says, the English translation is pretty accurate, but it doesn't give the same insight because it said, he made him out of the soil of the ground. But Adam doesn't mean in English soil of the ground. But he was called Adam because God made it out of the Adamah. In Hebrew, Adamah is soil. Now, I have never in my life have seen more reddish soil than in Tasmania. Never. No, truly. I asked there 3 years ago when we drove here, when we did our first tour, we were amazed. Sometimes we drove, the color is stunning of the reddish soil you have here in Tasmania. You know what's red in Hebrew? Adom.
Adom.
Adam, Adom, Adamah. Can you see? That's Hebrew. You mentioned I wouldn't call it the Christian message, but the biblical message, the first 10 names, it only works in the Hebrew. So, the people who kept the one true faith are the people who kept the original language of the world. Until, after the Tower of Babel. This is important to understand. So, again, now another thing, what is blood in Hebrew? Dam. You see, Adam, Adamah, Adom, Dam, it's all the same root. They're all connected. You can't see that in any other language. Hebrew is an amazing, amazing language. So, I don't know if I don't think much here, but often I speak in charismatic circles? Not circus. Sorry.
Very good.
In charismatic circles, in charismatic churches. And often, I have people coming to me, start speaking in tongues, and asking me if I speak in tongues. I always say, well, I believe that I'm the only one here speaking the heavenly language, and it's not necessarily because I'm more spiritual, just because I happen to be born in Israel. It is very clear that Hebrew is the heavenly language. And this will be almost impossible for you, of course, if you don't speak Hebrew. But the way you can actually share the gospel, if you do speak the language, just with the names of the Israelis and things like that, this is amazing. I can give you an example. This Dutch woman I told you about in the hostel, she was brilliant in that. Now, she didn't speak Hebrew.
Well, in Scotland.
No, in New Zealand. But she was so wise and she had such insight. So that was one of the first things. This is a good tip for you is to ask the Israelis their names, what do they mean? Almost every Israeli name has some deep meaning, and many of them come from the scriptures. So one day she had this guy, his story was kind of, I can't really remember, but I think his mom probably, died when he was very young, maybe 3 or 4. He was never really felt accepted or loved or things of that nature. Now his name was Iftach in Hebrew, or Jephthah, as you say in English. Right? One of the judges, how do you say? Jephthah? Yeah. Iftach. So I remember, because I was there and she was talking to him, and she asked him, what does Iftach mean? And until that point in time, I never even thought about the meaning of the name. of Iftach. So when she asked him, for a moment, I've been caught up. Yes, what does it mean? And he said to her, it means will open. And right away, oh yeah, that's what it means. And she said to him, that's you, she said.
Oh,
You, God, she said, want to use you to open up people. But for you to be able to do so, you have to be opened up yourself first. Can I tell you something? This is so powerful, more than any verses you would show people. Because in regarding to names, and it's also like Romans 11:11, which is easy to remember the verse or where it is. Samuel 25:25. What does it say? For as his name is, so is he. That's what it says. And it's the story, if you remember, with David and he's running and he's coming to Nabal, and Abigail, yeah, come towards him. Abigail, you said in English, I think. And what does she say to him? She said, his name is Naval, and he's what? He's a creep. That's literally what it means. Naval Shmo v'Nevelai Mo. I'm not quite sure how it's translated into the English. You can have a look. 1 Samuel 25:25. So the Hebrew names, more often than not, they actually, when you look in the scriptures, always the name reveals the purpose and the call of the people. You mentioned about, I use that often, about secular Jews not believing in God.
The one thing that's common between Gentiles and Jews is the need for comfort.
Yeah.
You've been relieved. There might be others here who are in the same position.
No problem.
We've been going a couple of hours, that's all.
Sure.
It's probably about time to start winding it up, otherwise we could go on forever.
I'm just taking, as long as you guys want, you can have a break. We